going on, everybody? It is Fabs. It's Bob Harris. It's the Believe Fantasy Football Show right here. Guys, we have got a lot to cover. And Bob Harris, last week was Bimageddon because we had 6 teams off. It felt like Armageddon because, everybody got hurt.
You know, I'm not one of those people who says, wow, the injuries are so much worse this year than every other year. Yet I'm starting to think injuries are worse this year. I definitely
Yes,
think,
they are.
I mean, we'll go back after the season and do counts and everything and see. But I mean, up to this point, it's just the big name players definitely seems like they're hitting hard. I think the volatility is hitting hard this year, too. The NFL's evil plan has come to fruition, right? I mean, they want everything to be equal. They want every game to be a one-score game and for the outcomes to be totally uncertain. So, look, it starts with the design of the football. It's an oblong spheroid, so it bounces funny ways. And from there, they've instituted all kinds of rules that make it so any given Sunday is a thing. And it's just, how many survivor pools got whacked last night when the Bengals beat the Jaguars? It's just, it's that kind of season.
Yeah, we're going to get into that game here in a minute, but we've got a lot to cover on the program today between the waiver wire, which is actually got a lot of options because of all the injuries. We'll, of course, talk about what we saw in terms of the backfield trends. We'll be bobbing for bargains as well and talking about some players maybe that are under the radar and our favorite segment. You know what it is, Bob Harris. It is must start or get smart. But before we get into that, the holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride and the NBA and the NHL. They're hitting midseason form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info. With up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, you got it all. Predictions, BetOnline, it's the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And not just for the big four either. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips for desktop and mobile access anytime for almost any sport that is played, from MMA to international soccer. Bob Harris is a big fan of international soccer. Yeah. I can't name one soccer player. Head to BetOnline today and remember, use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. So before we get into looking ahead, Bob, let's look at Monday night. And I got to be honest with you. I was pretty pleased with what I saw in many respects. First off, it was a good game. And we haven't seen a lot of those in prime time. It was a very good game. And by the way, the upcoming Thursday night game is Steelers-Patriots. It's not going to be good.
I'm going to love those 7 points.
Let's go first with it definitely was the biggest surprise of Monday night, and maybe the biggest surprise of the entire weekend. Jake Browning threw for 354. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, and scored almost 27 points, Bob Harris. He's got the Colts coming up next. Is Jake Browning a waiver wire ad?
Jake Browning is a block. Hopefully you have better options that are even more consistently productive. But if you're one of your opponents or someone else in your league is in dire straits, grab him up, stash him on the end of your bench and keep them from getting him. These games are in him. I think more important for fantasy managers is I've been ringing this bell since the preseason, Fabs, less than ideal quarterback situations are not having a quarterback. So for some of the top talents at wide receiver, we tend to get up in our feels about this. Oh, Jamar Chase is playing with Jake Browning. This is the worst thing ever.
I was right there, man. I was
right. I think it's a natural response to these situations. Look, we've seen it with Garrett Wilson too, where, Zach Wilson kind of fueled his fire enough to keep us satisfied. Not so much with Boyle, maybe not so much with Simeon. Maybe we'll cycle through all those guys. And if Zach wants to, maybe he'll be back. So I do think that there's something to be said for, block move with Browning. I don't know that I want to trust that every week, but I do feel a little more confident playing Jamar Chase going forward.
Me too. And again, Colts next week. Now on the other side, big injury. The Jaguars lost Trevor Lawrence. It looked bad. He got stepped on. He got bent over awkwardly. Everyone on social media was wondering where the carts are in Jacksonville because he was right. That was a little bit strange. Maybe he wanted to come off the field like that and not in a cart. What's the latest on Lawrence? Because it seems like we're going to see some CJ Beathard here, Bob.
You'll be happy to know that he did ride a cart out to the parking lot afterwards. They did have one. And also, not to be overlooked, Christian Kirk was on that cart with him with the groin injury that he suffered on the very first play. Many parlays
Yeah.
bit the dust at that moment.
Yeah.
So, they're calling it a sprain still. And I know if Cameron Wolf from NFL Network was in the locker room and he said teammates were talking to him and smiling as they walked away. And it didn't seem to be like a real ominous mood. So, I'm taking that as a positive, but we'll see. I mean, as you gauge where the teammate stepped on him, was that a high sprain? Is that, is that a mid sprain, low sprain? So we'll get more information on that, but he will miss time. And CJ Beathard's going to get the call.
So
I'm not
this
confident
week,
in him.
We've got CJ Beathard against Joe Flacco. I tweeted that out last night, and it got a lot of retweets. The bad quarterback matchups that we have, and Bob and I will talk about that on Thursday. I mean, Bailey Zappi against Mitch Trubisky, it's gross. Desmond Ridder, Baker Mayfield, Tommy DeVito is going to be starting. I mean, Jordan Love's a good quarterback, but quarterback is gross. It really is. So it was actually good to see Jake Browning go out and put up a good stat line because maybe we can have a little faith in starting him if need be. Back to the Bengals. Joe Mixon had a big game with well over 100 scrimmage yards, had a few touchdowns, almost 30 points. Bob mentioned Jamar Chase. Thank God. Huge game, 11 catches, 149, touchdown, and over 31 fantasy points. T. Higgins, not so much. Not really a startable guy right now. Only 3 catches on the night in his first game back from an injury. On the Jaguars side, Bob mentioned Christian Kirk out last night, played 1 snap, which sucked. As someone who had him, I still pulled out a win, but still sucked. Travis Etienne had a big game with almost 18 fantasy points. Calvin Ridley, even though Christian Kirk didn't play most of the game, he only had 4 catches and 7.3 points. That's what you get with Ridley, the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys. Evan Ingram finally got into the end zone, had his best game of the season, 9 catches, 82 yards, 23.3 fantasy points. Has a really bad matchup next week against Cleveland, but at least on Monday night, he was very good. Are we picking up Zay Jones now with Christian Kirk banged up, Bob? Is that going to be a player that we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, I hope he gets a little more run. Parker Washington seemed to have a legit role.
Yeah, he looked pretty good, right?
Right. Don't know if I'm digging that deep, but if we're bobbing for bargains, he's nearly a qualifier for that. Would like a little more information. Would love it if Trevor Lawrence was still his quarterback. Some of those things might conspire against him. CJ Beathard, to his credit, came and played well. I was wondering who the emergency quarterback was because Beathard looked like he hurt his wrist at one point.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
that was a little nerve-inducing there. So, and they didn't have another quarterback on the roster last night. So yeah, I mean, I do think Zay Jones is the natural pickup there.
Now let's go into the injuries, and we have 2 teams on a bye this week. That's it. Cardinals, Commanders. You're losing some good players there, but it's not by Mageddon. We just talked about Lawrence. CJ Beathard will likely start if Lawrence misses any time. And then you've got a few other quarterbacks that got hurt. Derek Carr is in concussion protocol. My guess is that Jameis Winston will start this week for New Orleans. The matchup's not great against Carolina. Derek Carr is not what you would call a reliable or productive fantasy quarterback. So
ask Mike Thomas.
I don't mind the move to Winston, especially as it pertains to Chris Olave. The Steelers, they play Thursday night against the Patriots. The line total is 30. 30.
Bet the under, and I don't bet the under.
Insane. Kenny Pickett is out. He had a surgical procedure on his high ankle, and it's going to be Mitch Trubisky. Running backs, and these hurt, Bob, literally and figuratively. Ramondre Stevenson, Bob, I don't know that we'll see him again this year. Why bring him back? If he's going to miss 2 or 3 weeks, dude, the season's over. The Patriots stink. So it may be the Zeke Elliott show the rest of the season. We'll talk about him when we look at the waiver wire. Brian Robinson was injured, but the Commanders are off this week. Still, you could pick up Antonio Gibson. Zach Charbonnet, Bob, what's the latest on him? Because he got hurt too. And Ken Walker obviously is not 100%. Are we maybe looking at DJ Dallas this week against San Francisco?
It's possible. We'll wait and see. I'm hopeful for Kenneth Walker. I mean, a 10-day turnaround plus the time missed, and also for Charbonnet. We haven't had any injury updates from Pete Carroll yet. And when we get them, they'll be overly optimistic, and it'll be hard to tell what the hell's going on because Pete Carroll does that.
So DJ Dallas may be an option off the waiver wire. It's not a good one, but I mean, it's a warm body. Amari Cooper, Bob, what's the latest on his status? He's been banged up the last few weeks. I was feeling good about Flacco being his quarterback, and it looked like things were going to go well. And then Coop went down. Are we looking at Elijah Moore being the number 1 this week?
Yeah, with a concussion, I mean, Chris Olave made it back in a week, so it's doable. But what you want to watch is the clues are limited practice Wednesday is a pretty good sign for these players if they get that early concussion. And if they get to the full practice on Friday, odds are they'll be cleared, assuming they remain symptom free. So that's what you'll be watching for. Look, I think Joe Flacco, Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains in the concussion protocol as well. I can't imagine you want to go back to him.
No.
If you're a team contending for a playoff with that defense, I think Joe Flacco gives you the better chance. If that's the case, then Elijah Moore is the thing, right? I think, there's a connection built in from their time together at Flacco and Moore in New York with the Jets. And I'm telling you, the Jets are probably wishing they had had the foresight to make a move like this with Joe Flacco. Apparently the arm is still elite. And I had concerns like, maybe he could dominate a 7-on-7, but when all the bodies are flying around, would he be hold up and be up to speed? He looked perfectly fine.
Yep.
So in fact, looks like an upgrade over what they've had for most of the season, including mostly Deshaun Watson for most, a couple of games of goodness from him. But yeah, so if Mark Cooper's back, I'm happy for him, but I like Elijah Moore too.
We mentioned Christian Kirk went out with the groin injury. Not sure when we're going to see him next. Zay Jones would be the pivot. And then Christian Watson, who had another big game. Like, I don't know what it is about touchdowns in the second half of seasons, but Watson's been a guy who's getting into the end zone lately again. But he got hurt in that Green Bay game, that surprising win over Kansas City. What's the latest on Watson? And regardless, I'm loving Jaden Reed coming up in week 14.
Yeah, we may talk about this situation when we start bobbing for bargains. I'll tell you that much. We don't know about Watson. I thought it was encouraging that he didn't leave the field, right? They didn't take him into the locker room immediately. He was there for the end of the game. So maybe it was something minor. It almost, I was like, oh, maybe just a cramp. So we'll see. The hamstring was an issue for him earlier this year, though. So this is something to watch. All
right. You just mentioned it. It's the segment we've all been waiting for all week long. Bobbing for bargains.
Here we go.
I want like Price is Right music going on in the background there, Toss. So we're going to go through the top waiver wire ads of the week. But first, we are going to go to Bob Harris, the man, the myth, the legend, the legendary king, who's going to give us some under the radar ads that we may want to take a look at here this week. Go ahead, Bob.
Since we were on the subject of Green Bay, Dontavian Wicks had a bigger role early this season when Watson was out. In the first 4 games of the year, he averaged 36 snaps a game. Since then, he's been down in the 20 range. Expect that to go back up if Watson's out. And he's also kind of the direct backup for Reed, too, and he's been a little nicked up at times. So far this season, 202 snaps out wide, 84 in the slot, targeted 36 times, 23 catches, 374 yards, and a touchdown in week 2. So 4 games with 4 receptions. He's going to be flying under the radar. Go snag him just in case. And I'm going to say another guy on bye, Michael Carter. James Conner was fine, much better than anybody I think expected against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But were something to happen, Michael Carter, we saw against the Rams 2 weeks ago, fourth quarter, he had the role to himself. Might be a piece just to build some depth in case, especially if you're a James Conner investor.
All right, let's get into the rest of the waiver wire ads. We'll start at the quarterback position. We mentioned Jameis Winston as an ad with Derek Carr in the concussion protocol. Jake Browning also has got to be in the mix right now after that big game against Jacksonville. Bob, if you had to start one quarterback this week, say you're in a super flex league, are you picking up Browning or Winston for this week's games?
I'd probably pick up Winston. The gunslinger, he's got some good weapons. Not that Jake Browning doesn't. Just a little more history with Winston. And also, Alvin Kamara there, Rashid Shaheed should be back. I think some good weapons for him.
Running backs. And we're actually, I wouldn't say deep, but there's some options because of the injuries. Antonio Gibson is still available in a lot of leagues, and the Commanders are off this week. So you may want to add him just in case, add him and stash him in case Robinson misses extended time. But Zeke Elliott's going to be the number one ad at running back in most leagues, available in over 40% of leagues right now, actually over 50% of leagues on Yahoo. Zeke's got Pittsburgh this week. I don't know that Ramondre is going to be back at all this season. Zeke Elliott is going to be a very popular ad. Tajay Spears, Bob, might have been the big ad. But
right.
Then we found out that Derrick Henry was not in concussion protocol, which means he's going to play against Miami on Monday night. I'll actually be at that game. So I would still pick up Tajay Spears, especially if I have Derrick Henry as insurance just in case. But I don't think you're going to be able to start him this week. Roshan Johnson, another player who before the bye was the top back for Chicago. Deontay Foreman's coming back this week, we think. But still, Roshan's a young guy. You could roster him and maybe stash him on your bench.
Pass protection looks like it's going to keep him in the game. And on Spears, it looks like December Derek's coming back. Mike Vrabel's angry. He's firing people. He wants to win some games. I bet he leans heavily on Henry, maybe even more heavily than we've seen so far this year.
Moving on to wide receivers, Noah Brown's going to be the big ad because unfortunately Tank Dell went down with an injury and he's going to miss the rest of the season. And that's a big loss from a fantasy perspective because Tank Dell had been really lighting it up. Brown available in more than 50% of leagues on Yahoo. Problem is, you got the Jets this week. Not a great matchup, but certainly worth a roster spot. Curtis Samuel same thing. Worth the roster spot. Stash him. The Commanders, again, are on a bye, one of two teams on a bye, but you can pick him up, grab him, and hold on to him. Jalen Hyatt for the Giants in the game before the bye. He had 15.9 fantasy points. Maybe the Giants want to see what they have in the rookie end of season because they're already playing for nothing at this point. So Jalen Hyatt also worth a look at wide receiver. Bob, anybody else?
No, I think you covered most of them. Like Leonard Fournette says he's ready, Fabs. Again, we've talked about him before, but if you're into speculative investments, think about adding him. He's still on the practice squad. Mm-hmm. I don't know if some platforms, your mileage may vary there, but if he's available, go ahead and snag him, stash him on the bench. Another December type player, especially in a cold weather climate, might be very useful.
Some tight ends that you can grab. Brevin Jordan, Houston, had a really good game. Scored almost 10 points. Played 51 snaps. Now, of course, this assumes no Dalton Schultz, so keep tabs on Schultz's status. Gerald Everett has looked good the last couple of weeks. He's not putting up huge numbers, but if I can get low double digits or like a 9 from a tight end, I mean, that's not bad if it's not an elite player. And Everett's got the Broncos this week, who are one of the worst teams in the league against tight ends, so you can pick up and actually start Gerald Everett at the tight end position. Going a little bit deeper, I mean, I guess you could go with like a Tucker Kraft, although he's got the Giants this week, and their defense has been pretty good against tight ends. Tight end remains a thin position, but there are some out there. Jen Piacenti would tell you that you can get Chiggy with it this week with Chigakonkwo.
He's coming on.
Yeah, so he's starting to come around. It's taken a long time. The targets are getting there. The snaps are there. Now maybe we'll see him put up some numbers. He, of course, has.
I think it's interesting, Fabs. A lot of these players that we talk about and we have high hopes for, and have these conversations in May and June about our lofty expectations, it sometimes takes a little bit of time for them to reach that point. It's like I always say, halfway through the season, well, I'm not wrong yet about players. We can carry that all the way through the end of the season and move to next year. I'm still not wrong on Juwan Johnson. He's still playing. And I've been in on that for like 3 years. But so some of these people are longer term projects, and as fantasy managers, we get a little overly enthusiastic or optimistic and hope for a little bit more.
Yeah, I took the L with Juwan Johnson. I've already taken the L with Kenny Pickett. They're not all right, folks. Unfortunately, if they were, I'd be a much richer man. Let's put it that way. So that's our look at the waiver wire for Week 14. Utilize it, guys, because there's some decent options out there because of all the injuries that went down this past weekend. So make sure you're jumping on that waiver wire. And by the way, even if you're not going to make the playoffs, do not get lazy. Set your lineups because you could affect what happens in the playoffs and who makes the playoffs. Keep that in mind.
Somebody else's day.
Exactly. I mean, you could always say that, hey, I beat your ass in Week 14 and knocked you out of the playoffs. Maybe that's good enough. Bob, let's look at the backfield usages from this past week and see what we can learn from it. And we'll start off in Detroit, where David Montgomery led the backfield in snaps and touches, and Jahmyr Gibbs had a bad game. Is this a sign of things to come, or is this backfield just going to be so damn confusing that we just have to start both guys every week and cross our fingers?
Start both guys every week and cross your fingers. 36 to 26 snaps. They both ran 14 routes, so David Montgomery is involved in the passing game as Jahmyr Gibbs, so that's a little concerning. Both had 2 targets. The 18 to 8 carries was the thing that did us in. So yeah, I mean, you're still rolling with them and you're hoping you get the good outcome each week.
Yep. The Texans backfield bit us in the hiney last week. We all thought it was going to be Devin Singletary, and why wouldn't we? He'd been looking very good. And while he did outsnap Dameon Pierce, it was only by 4. Pierce had 15 touches compared to Singletary's 9, and Pierce had 4 red zone looks compared to Singletary's 1. Have the Texans gone back to Pierce permanently, you think, or is this going to be a committee rest away?
committee the rest of the way. And, it was interesting. Bobby Slowick, as Damian Pierce was heading back, I think the week he was first got back on the practice field, talked about how this workload was going to be a timeshare, and that was their desired outcome. And I think it is. I think Singletary is impressed enough that he'll keep a role. It won't be Damian Pierce going automatically back to the lead. But there are going to be times where it looks like it and times where it looks like Singletary has the lead. And both of them seem to get some goal line chances. So, I'm not eager to play either of them because it's a pretty even split, and it's not a robust enough running game for me to get excited about, or not the kind of high-end outputs that you see in Detroit from those backs on a week-to-week basis. But look, we're getting down to the late part of the season, and attrition's been a thing. So yeah, you can play either one of them, but be cautious.
And it stinks too because they got the Jets coming up next, and that's a good matchup. The Jets aren't great against running backs,
horrible,
and you don't know who to play, and that's a problem. In Miami, you know who to play, both. Raheem Mostert played 23 snaps. Devon Achane only played 37, but he played a lot in the second half. He outtouched Mostert 20-12. But again, the Dolphins basically sat Mostert down for a lot of the second half, and they let Achane cook in that offense. I would argue that Achane is the better of the two backs. Rest away, younger, more explosive. Guy can take the ball to the house anytime. Not that Raheem can't, but I'd rather have Achane rest of the season than Raheem Mostert. But both guys are startable assets. They've got the Titans this week, Bob. You got both guys in your lineup?
If I have both, they're both in the same lineup. I mean, that's that's where we're at right now. I think it's hard to sit the two pieces of that offense that has 50 some touchdowns or pushing the 50 touchdown mark. Right. Raheem Mostert scoring on a regular basis as well. But yes, I would be playing both of them, and it is possible you could have them in the same lineup, and I wouldn't hesitate if I did.
Jets backfield. I mean, Breece Hall still dominating. He had 46 snaps played and 19 touches, but Dalvin Cook got a little more burn. He had 10 touches in the game, only 18 snaps played. Any concerns with Breece Hall this week?
Yeah.
The Jets are a team that is to say that they're struggling on the offensive side of the football. I mean, that's an understatement. They've got the Texans this week. Any trepidation about Breece Hall?
Yeah, tons of trepidation. It hasn't been great. He's been on kind of a lousy roll, right? So I'd be dialing back on that. They're not getting a ton of snaps anyway. You're probably still playing him, and he's been carrying you through, in PPR leagues because he's been getting some looks because these quarterbacks are dumping down a fair amount. Mm-hmm. So that's the hope, what you're hanging your hat on there. And also, he's a huge, big play threat. I mean, he could break one off at any time. But Robert Saleh kind of criticized him last week, heading into last week's game, and said, look, you got to do the grimy things, get the grimy yards up the middle and not try to hit a home run every play. And to his credit, Hall took the, addressed the criticism and said, it's true. And, if you're going to be one of the best players on the team, you got to take the coaching. So I love his attitude and everything, but boy, this offense is not rolling good. And I'm looking for better options if I have them.
This one here hurts because I personally made a trade for DeAndre Swift earlier in the season, and it worked out really well. Look at his numbers the last few weeks. I mean, they've been bad. Single digits in 2 of his last 3 games. Ken Gainwell actually outsnapped him last week. He had 39 snaps played compared to Swift at 28, and Gainwell only had 1 less touch, 8-7. He's got the Cowboys this week, my beloveds. Yes, I am excited about that game, Bob Harris. Is DeAndre Swift a guy now that we got to get out of our lineups?
Again, you're going to need to check your options very carefully, but everything you said is true. Kenneth Gainwell outsnapping him is a concern. More routes run, 32-19, 5 targets each. So, I mean, there was, that was fairly even, but the other problem for Swift is, Jalen Hurts is the goal line back there for the most part. So he doesn't get quality looks in the, in fortuitous situations either. So yeah, it's a huge concern.
And finally, the Steelers. And again, they play on Thursday night against the Patriots, whose defense is still pretty damn good. They just can't score a point to save their lives. Najee Harris played 36 snaps last week compared to Jaylen Warren at 26. Najee had 8 more touches. I think Najee's the better of the 2 players from a fantasy perspective. Warren is certainly more explosive. Not a great matchup this week, though, Bob. I mean, what are we doing with Najee and Jaylen Warren this weekend?
You're playing the one you have. I mean, it's hard to imagine you have, 2 or 3 options better. I think Jaylen Warren's still an ideal flex play. Najee Harris, a running back 2. and hopefully a flex if you have a little more room. But like if this game this week is 5-3, I mean, would you be shocked at the end? The Patriots have been
five. I mean that 5 would be hard, but yeah, I guess
a safety and a field goal. I mean, no offense, no touchdown. So I just like it would be shocking. The Patriots, the last 3 games they've lost 3 games to a total 26 points, I think, and scored against them. It's just been miserable. So I don't have high expectations on either side of the ball.
All right. I love this segment because I get into Bob Harris's head, and it's a scary place sometimes, but when we're talking fantasy football, it's a wealth of knowledge. Must start or get smart. And I got a lot of big names on this list, Bob. People are needing our help. Patrick Mahomes is averaging 18.5 points per game this year. That is basically what Jordan Love has averaged. Jordan Love is at right around the same mark. Jordan Love is not a must start. Is Patrick Mahomes a must start, or is it time to get smart?
You're going to have to check your options, right? Don't outsmart yourself in this case. Patrick Mahomes has still been a proven track record. It hasn't been great this year. And the Chiefs offense, if you look at those games, that run where they were scoring, 5 points a game in the second half?
Yeah.
It's concerning, right? So you haven't had that offensive output, and you may have quarterbacks who have risen up and are serving you well. I'm looking at you, CJ Stroud. I mean, it's entirely possible you were a quarterback you drafted fairly late is performing every bit as well. So again, the concern is outsmarting yourself. Like we talked about with Jamar Chase. Oh, it's a horrible quarterback situation. I'm going to sit a really good player, and that really good player delivers. But he needs everything to go right. So I'm looking at other pieces if I have them.
That's where we're at right now. Like if I got Dak Prescott,
I'm open to. Oh yeah, 100%.
Mahomes on my bench, dude. Mahomes on my bench, and he's staying there. Especially this week. Next up, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert scored 28 points in Week 10 against Detroit. He scored 25 points against Green Bay in Week 11. The last 2 games, he has scored a combined 21 points and change. Not good. Got the Broncos this week. Must start or get smart?
Get smart, but again, it's going to be tough having better options. You kind of drafted him in the middle range, and so your next quarterback might have been a little later. I do think that, maybe the return of Josh Palmer would help a little bit. The return of Austin Eckler would help too. He's been playing.
We got to get into that, dude. And Austin's my friend. I love Austin. Last 3 games, Bob, 7 points, 9.4 points, 4.7 points. The 3 games before that, he was over 20 every single game. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not going to ask him. I'm sure he's frustrated. He's got the Broncos this week. Must start or get smart?
You're playing the name and not the numbers right now if you're playing Austin Eckler, right? That's what you're playing, the name and his history. And you're hoping for him to come up with one of his standard games. I'm looking at other options.
It's unbelievable, man. We've had so many superstars not perform up to snuff this season. It's been rough. I'm a poet and didn't know it. Tony Pollard. Pollard is woken up. Last few weeks have been very good. But Bobby's got the Eagles this week. And the last time he played the Eagles, it was not good. Must start or get smart?
I think he's been a get smart play most of this year, right? So check your options, look around. Don't go overboard, right? I think that's the thing. Don't overreact. If you have reasonable options, feel free to play them. But if if you're reaching down and, going for second running backs on teams that aren't, if you're looking at Kenneth Gainwell, yeah, he's getting more run. But you've got, being smart means looking at your options and assessing carefully. Look at those points per game. Go back in your league scoring, stats and look at a week by week basis and see what they're doing and look and see how the spike weeks are affecting the score and how likely they are to have a spike week. I don't think this week's a spike week, so be smart.
Jahmyr Gibbs. His fantasy points have dropped 5 straight weeks. He's gone from 29 to 26 to 21 to 11 to 6 last week. He's got the Bears this week. Now, the Bears are good against the run, but pass-catching running backs can beat them and have. Must start or get smart, Jahmyr Gibbs?
I think he's a get smart too. But again, you check your options carefully, look at that matchup and realize that, part of the thing about getting smart, Fabs, is, you have to get over the FOMO, the fear of missing out on the breakout game. That's one of the things that makes it hard to bench a big name player is our concern that we're going to miss out. Well, we're worried about missing out. We are missing out, right? We're missing out on players who are playing more productively. So again, check your check your players, check your stats, see who's putting up more consistent numbers. That's what you want to play. Gibbs has not been consistent.
All right. Justin Jefferson is expected to be back this week. He's got a matchup, which, and Justin Fields is matchup proof. I mean, it doesn't matter who he's playing. He's got the Raiders this week in Las Vegas. He hadn't played in a while. We're not sure who the quarterback's going to be. Justin Jefferson must start or get smart.
You're gonna start him because you've been dying to start him. And we know, I do agree, he's matchup proof. Is he quarterback proof? We don't know that yet. We've only seen him with really, one
with just Kirk Cousins, right? Exactly.
Kirk Cousins, right? So, and we don't know who the starter is going to be. I mean, I hope it's Josh Dobbs, but do I? I don't know. I less information on Jaron Hall, and Sean Mannion seems like the look up journeyman in the dictionary. There he is. So yeah, I mean, you're going to play him, and I'm not going to be able to talk you out of it. And I don't know that I want to talk you out of it because he's Justin Jefferson.
I haven't been in a couple of leagues. I'm playing him. I'm very interested to see what he can do without Kirk Cousins, but he's an elite guy, so I'm not overly worried about Justin Jefferson. Next up, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was having another stink bomb, and then he scored a late touchdown, finished with 15.9 points. But Bob, the targets are way down. Like he was I know 8 targets is a lot for a mere mortal, but like Cooper Kupp, I mean, we're expecting double-digit targets. Remember when he came back, he started off in his first 2 games back. He had 21 combined targets. He had 17 combined targets in the next 2 games. And then after that, 7, 1, 5, and 8. Puka Nacua has taken a little bit away from Cooper Kupp. They've got the Ravens this week, dude. That's a bad matchup. Is Cooper Kupp a must start, or do we get smart?
It's hard for me to imagine if you're in a league that starts 3 wide receivers, you're going to have a better option as your wide receiver 3 than Cooper Kupp. I mean, I would, it's hard for me to envision having the options available to me that would make me comfortable sitting Cooper Kupp. If you're in a 2 receiver league, if you're only starting 2 and it's like there's not a flex or something, maybe you have developed some options. Maybe a Nico Collins has come on for you that you didn't expect, or maybe you have a tough decision right now between Cooper Kupp and Adam Thielen, right? 2 guys who, can get it done, but don't necessarily do it every week. So those are going to be the tough decisions. But yeah, in a 3 receiver league, it's probably going to be hard to sit Cooper Kupp.
All right. Final one. And it's another tough one. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's super talented. One of the best young receivers in the league. He's scored 8 or fewer points in 2 of his last 3 games, including 1 game where he scored 9/10 of a point. Right now, we don't know who the Jets quarterback is. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want Zach Wilson back. I didn't want him to lose the job it's Tim Flippin Boyle and Trevor Siemian, for Christ's sake. Just let the kid play. He's going to stink. He ain't going to make the playoffs anyways, and he'll be gone sooner than later. Garrett Wilson, Atlanta this week. Excuse me. No, not Atlanta this week. My bad. Atlanta was last week, Bob Harris.
Yes.
What's that?
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah, I went back. Yeah, my brain went back to the previous week. Houston this week. Their defense has been playing better under D'Amico Ryans. Garrett Wilson must start or get smart.
It's going to depend on the quarterback. If Zach Wilson somehow decides he's okay to play, I know I'm overplaying the Diana Rossini report from The Athletic says that he doesn't want to go back in the lineup. Robert Saleh.
Yeah, but I don't believe that.
I don't either. Robert Saleh shot it down too.
I'm sorry, but what is he going to curl into a little ball and go into the corner?
How much worse could it get? I mean, he's seen he has arisen to new depths, to quote the great Michael Dokes, the former heavyweight boxer. So the late great heavyweight boxer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if he's playing, I'm probably going to be a little more confident, and if he's not playing, I'm going to be digging a little deeper on that list of options, and it's going to be hard to start Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver 3.
And wide receiver took a little bit of a hit, with Tank Dell and Christian Kirk not playing potentially this upcoming week. We know Dell's out for the season, so yeah, Garrett Wilson's going to be in a lot of lineups. I'm about to say something I never thought I'd say in a million years. Let's hope Zach Wilson's back at quarterback for the Jets. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it is, man.
It's true, though.
That is how bad it is. All right, so before we go, remember last week I was talking about Eminem?
Oh, no.
And Toss, you led me down the wrong path. You told me it was some song. It wasn't a song. What's the name of that damn song by Eminem? The one that
Lose Yourself.
Lose Yourself. Yes. Lose Yourself. Bob, should I try?
Don't.
You want me to
Stop
do
now. Stop now. I mean, you're gonna do it. So I mean, you've never listened to me before. Don't start now.
I
But
listen
don't
to
do
you
it.
all the time. I listen to your lousy fantasy advice all the time. What are you talking about, man? No, it's glorious fantasy advice. But here's the thing. I don't know because I like the song, but I don't know if I know it well enough where I actually can get like the rhythm of the song down. So I'd have to listen.
You have to ask yourself that question. If you're asking yourself that question, do I know the rhythm of this song well enough? I think you've answered your question.
So you better lose yourself in the music. The moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only got one shot. Don't miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Mic drop.
Thank God. Don't pick it back up.
I am a man of my word.
It was, hey, look, I'm not going to lie. It was better. It was better. It was way better than I expected. And it was horrible. And it was way better than I expected.
If I was expecting a 1 out of 10, it may have been
1.5.
Half of, yeah. So, all right. Anyways, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Tosh, you can go ahead and clip that for future shows. Yeah, it was not very good. But Bob Harris, the man, the myth, the legend, legendary king. Thanks again. We will be back on Thursday to preview what should be a scintillating Steelers-Patriots game. Can't wait for that. Trubisky against Zappy. That's going to be a show. And we will look ahead at week 14, 1 week before the fantasy playoffs begin in most leagues, and a big game. My beloved Dallas Cowboys, Toss's beloved Dallas Cowboys against the Philadelphia Eagles. I actually might do the show wearing a Cowboys helmet next week. This week, later in the week, Thursday. I might wear maybe for part of the show. I think the Cowboys are wearing the white one.
Wear the Cowboys helmet and wrap. That would be fantastic.
That'd be good. Hey, I aim to please. And we aim to please. Thanks again for listening to the Believe Fantasy Football Show presented by Bet Online. For Bob Harris, the legendary king, I am Fabs. Thank you for subscribing. Hit us up on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. We will see you on Thursday. Hit those waiver wires.